Chapter 6 The Flame That Burned the Righteous. 1430. Less than a year after the coronation at Reims, Jeanne d'Arc, the peasant girl from Domremy who had once led a nation to victory, now stood on the fringes of glory. The politics of the royal court slowly edged her out. Whispered conspiracies behind velvet curtains, suspicious glances in the palace halls, and the cold silence of King Charles VII became an unspoken wall, pushing Jeanne away from the heart of destiny. 1. The Battle of Compiègne, where an angel was betrayed. In May 1430, Jeanne accepted a call to defend the town of Compiègne, a strategic stronghold under siege by Burgundian forces. Without waiting for royal command, she marched with a small force, still carrying the white banner bearing the image of an angel, the same one she had raised high at Orléans. But this time there was no miracle. During an evening counterattack, the French were repelled. Jeanne, as always, led from the front, refusing to retreat. She fought to the end, shielding her soldiers as they retreated toward the city gate. The gate slammed shut. Jeanne was left outside. Surrounded by enemies, she was captured by Burgundian troops. No rescue force came. No word arrived from the king. It is said that certain French commanders had ordered the gates closed once they learned Jeanne was outside. Jealousy and fear of a peasant saint had birthed a betrayal worthy of eternal condemnation. 2. Prisoner of war and pawn of politics. Jeanne was imprisoned under brutal conditions, chained, mocked, and humiliated by those who sought to break her spirit. Yet she did not yield. The Burgundians did not hold her for long. For 10,000 livres they sold her to the English, who longed to make her a scapegoat, a sacrificial symbol to destroy the rising hope within France. Charles VII, the very king she had placed on the throne, remained silent. There were no negotiations. No envoy was sent to bargain. No ransom offered for the girl who had crowned him. Jeanne understood. She had been abandoned. 3. The trial at Rouen, justice in the hands of the powerful. In Rouen, the English capital of Normandy, Jeanne was brought before a court of the Inquisition, led by Bishop Pierre Cauchon. A Frenchman aligned with the English, Cauchon was determined to destroy Jeanne to protect the order of the church and the political balance. The trial was a mockery of justice. Jeanne was denied legal counsel. She was interrogated for hours daily by biased clerics. They sought to entrap her with their questions, probing her visions, the voices of angels, and her wearing of armor and bearing of arms, deeds condemned as unnatural for a woman. But Jeanne replied with wisdom beyond her years. I would rather die than betray the call of God in my heart. They asked, if the church tells you your visions are false, would you obey? She answered, I trust the word of God more than the word of men. 4. The final days, a flame that would not die. Throughout her imprisonment, Jeanne was treated as a dangerous enemy. She was bound in iron. She slept in a cold stone cell, moonlight slipping through narrow cracks. English guards watched her, not out of fear she would escape, but because even her presence could shake their beliefs. A French priest, Father Jean Massou, recorded, I saw her pray every day in quiet whispers. She never asked to live, never begged for mercy. She only prayed for France. Under pressure, Jeanne eventually signed a retraction of her heresy, afraid of being burned alive. But only days later, upon realizing she had been deceived and forced back into her previous attire in dreadful conditions, she revoked her recantation. She declared, I choose death rather than to betray God. 5. The pyre, the day France's heart turned to ashes at dawn on May 30th, 1431, Jeanne was led to the marketplace of Rouen. Crowds gathered. On the platform, English nobles sat as if watching a spectacle. Yet among the people, many wept in silence. Jeanne, bound to the stake, remained serene. She asked to hold a crucifix, and a priest brought her a small wooden cross from a nearby cemetery. As the fire was lit, she lifted her eyes to the heavens and cried out, Jesus! Jesus! The wind shifted, sending smoke toward the onlookers. Flames devoured her. But those final words, Jesus, echoed in the hearts of all who heard them. One English commander is said to have murmured, we have burned a saint, her ashes were thrown into the Seine. The English hoped to erase her from memory. They failed. Epilogue, immortal in the flame, Jeanne d'Arc died at 19, a girl who bore the sword for faith, carried the banner for justice, and embraced death for unshakable belief. She did not die in the fire. She lives on in history, in legend, and in the pages no empire, no tribunal could ever destroy. Centuries later, the Catholic Church canonized Jeanne d'Arc. France honors her as the Maid of Orleans. And the world remembers her as a symbol of courage, righteousness, and faith that yields to nothing.